Welcome to the Explainer. So if you're living in an intentional community or an anarchist commune, you probably know the exact struggle we're talking about today. You really want to live strictly by your ideals, but you still find yourself having to buy groceries from a megamart just to survive. Well, today we're exploring a source text that tackles that exact problem head-on. It lays out a highly practical roadmap for localizing production so your community can actually achieve true self-reliance. Okay, let's dive right into this.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, understanding local autonomy. Second, the problem with dependency. Third, the 5 pillars of localizing. Fourth, everyday examples in practice. And finally, the gradual path forward.
Section 1. Understanding local autonomy. What it actually means for a commune. The source text kicks things off with a pretty heavy-hitting quote here. Dependence on external markets is dependence on external powers. It's basically arguing that if we're relying on outside corporate supply chains just for our daily bread, well, our independence is kind of just an illusion. We're inherently bound to those external systems.
But the author makes a really crucial distinction here about what autonomy actually is. It isn't about, building a fortress and completely isolating yourselves. It's simply the capacity for self-reliance. It's about meeting essential needs collectively, so that when your commune does interact with the outside world, you're doing it entirely on your own terms. Not because you're absolutely desperate for a bar of soap, right?
Moving to Section 2, the problem with dependency, capitalist markets versus communal choice. And this brilliantly illustrates the core critique of the text. It contrasts two totally different models. On the one side, you have capitalist dependency, which means relying on these massive, fragile global supply chains that are basically built on scarcity and monopoly. On the other side, communal autonomy, providing for yourselves, making exchange a choice, not a necessity. It's like, instead of being backed into a corner to buy from a massive corporation, your community grows its own food. So any trade you do outside of that is just a bonus.
Section 3. The 5 pillars of localizing. Why communal production actually matters. So the source breaks down the why into 5 main pillars: autonomy, resilience, sustainability, skill building, and equality. These really form the bedrock of why a community should make things for itself. Let's take a closer look.
Let's dig into those first two, autonomy and resilience. Simply put, if a global supply chain completely snaps, and we've all seen that happen recently, suddenly the shelves are empty, or the local big box store totally jacks up prices. But your commune doesn't need to panic. You're already making your own essentials. It's literally a shield against external market crises and price shocks. Then we have sustainability and skill building. The text points out that by doing this, you're bypassing tons of wasteful transport and plastic packaging. But maybe even more importantly, instead of just swiping a card for a new item, commune members are actually learning. They're gaining real, practical knowledge, learning how to build, weld, and repair things together as a team.
And here's the 5th pillar, which is absolutely crucial: equality. The source makes the point that when production is communal, access to goods doesn't depend on unequal purchasing power anymore. Think about it. If the commune makes the toothpaste collectively, everyone gets the toothpaste. It takes personal wealth totally out of the equation.
Section 4. Everyday examples in practice. The how of local autonomy.
This is where the framework gets super practical. How do we actually do this? Well, need hygiene products? The communal solution is setting up a workshop for soap, shampoo, and toothpaste. Clothing and textiles? You look at cooperative tailoring or weaving. Household goods? Producing your own furniture, pottery, or cleaning supplies. It really demystifies the whole idea that everyday stuff has to come from a factory halfway across the globe.
And the text scales this up to larger systems too. For energy, we're talking local renewable co-ops like shared solar grids or biogas. Healthcare basics? Growing herbal medicines and making basic medical supplies on site. Even education materials, setting up commune-owned printing presses or shared digital tools. It's about bringing the infrastructure right into the community. Now, here is a really vital concept from the text: intercommunal solidarity. What happens when you have a surplus? You trade it with other communes. You trade your extra carrots for their extra apples. This turns exchange into a choice, a true act of solidarity that strengthens bonds without ever having to deal with capitalist intermediaries. Section 5. The gradual path forward, a step-by-step journey. Let's be real, this doesn't happen overnight. And the text fully acknowledges that. Let's look at how this builds. It outlines a very gradual path. Step 1 is always food sovereignty. You gotta eat first, right? Then, step 2, you expand into daily necessities like clothes and tools. Finally, step 3, you slowly build up to a fully self-reliant economy. It's a journey. The text actually summarizes the ultimate goal here with this incredible quote. Localizing production is not simply about goods. It is about freedom from domination, resilience against crisis, and dignity and self-sufficiency. That's powerful. It really frames the act of making a simple bar of soap as a profound declaration of independence.
And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. So, according to this framework, I want to leave you with a question to think about. What is the very first step your community can take toward local production today? Seriously, whether it's planting just one shared garden bed or making a batch of cleaning spray together, how are you going to start building that resilience? Thanks so much for hanging out and exploring these ideas with me. Keep learning and see you next time.